Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aaron Silvers, and it will be getting started in about 3 minutes. So just everybody hang tight. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Aaron Silvers, and thanks for joining us today. We're going to talk. We're getting ready for XAPI Camp Toronto next week. It's taking place on Tuesday, November 17th, at the Institute for Performance and Learning National Conference. We're a pre-conference session on Tuesday, and we're very excited about it. First of all, I think it's important for us to at least raise awareness that it's with folks like the Institute for Performance and Learning as well, and support from folks like Domino, Riptide, Risk, Rusty Software, and Torrance Learning. This is the reason they enable us to be able to put on this event to help people in their own localities and their own industries become aware and get some real actionable information around what Experience API is and what it means to them. So a little bit about us. I'm Aaron. Obviously, I just introduced myself. My partner, Megan Bowe, and I, we form a consultancy called Making Better, and we really focus on using XAPI to enable reporting strategy, which gets into both the data strategy, content strategy, and things like that. Now we've been organizing XAPI camps all year long. This is going to be our 4th event this year, and we just started this year, so it's really the success of the events and the success of API and the growth and adoption of XAPI has been phenomenal. And so the way we go about doing XAPI camps is a little bit different from a major trade show. We really like to reach out to the participants as they sign up and get and find out like what is it they want as a goal, and how can we help help them meet their goals. And so we do that from a blend of both more formal planned things like the campfire talks, and then providing the unplanned time where really the participants themselves drive the conversation and drive the agenda forward. So in helping to frame this particular event, which is distinct from every event seems to be unique in their own way. Some of the things that people have been saying about what they want to get out of XAPI Camp in Toronto is, one, how can we decide if and when to implement XAPI? Two, how can we have better conversations with potential vendors? Three, what considerations should we have for our next LMS? Four, what can be different about content with XAPI from typical e-learning? Five, how do I even get started? Other questions that we've gotten for this camp include, how might XAPI impact or inform departments beyond our learning and development team? And what are some real world examples of how other companies are using XAPI today? So these are things that we're going to be addressing with both the speakers that we have planned for next week, as well as I think I think those questions are going to largely inform some of the breakout groups that we're going to have next week as well. So today, I think the best thing that we can do is really to help answer a couple things. One, just what is XAPI? So there's kind of grounding language and expectations around that. Two, I'd like to really introduce you to who you're going to see at XAPI Camp, at least in terms of the people that we've invited to help kind of join us in terms of expertise. And then three, what can you be doing to get ready for XAPI Camp? So one question I would ask is how much would you say you know about XAPI? And apparently we don't have a polling feature, so it's a silly thing to ask you guys without feedback. But I would say, think about how much would you say you know about XAPI? So let's talk about what that is. The Experience API is a standard way of how we talk about our experiences using data. I think it's the simplest way that I could put that. If I can give you a visual of what that really looks like, you think about the different activities along the top. You have social activities or performance things that we do in the workplace. There are assessments that you take. There's content that that people are working with, especially from an L&D perspective. As well, though, as we have all these devices and sensors. We take part in simulations, and all of these things, all right, can share data in some way, and what XAPI does is define the structure of that data in terms of an actor, which is the person or the group that is performing the activity, the verb that is being used, the object on which they are doing things, the context and the result of that activity. All of those things going to a learning record store, which is a set of functionality that basically really handles two purposes. One, to hold on to all of this information. Two, to make it so that it can be passed around. And where does it pass it around? It passes, first of all, to the types of things along the bottom. The data that's in a learning record store can be used to exchange with other systems, but it could also be used to power predictive algorithms, analytics, feedback loops. It enables data ownership by provisioning data to different types of environments, and it helps empower personalized learning and personalized activities. Now, what this means, to summarize, is that the Experience API can track many different types of experiences, including the things people do on the web, in mobile applications with wearables, in classrooms, and in workplace environments. It moves us from a practice beyond a web-based didactic model, which is largely what you see with e-learning, and have seen it for the last decade. It promotes a better design and technology practices because it's making use of the way in which web services work today. Because of that, then it makes integration with other systems and practices much easier. But it also provides a way to gather and use more useful information than what we're used to gathering. So you might want to think about this in terms of what does it, what are the things that it enables? And these are how type questions. So how can I inform better business decisions? How do I avoid locking us into solutions? How can I make investments in learning development that last longer and are more future-proof? How can I make sure that what I evaluate today is useful into the future? And how will I connect a learner's activities across multiple applications? So at this point, I'd just like to say that, there is a question and answer feature built into Google Hangouts. And if you have any questions, please enter them in, and I will do everything I can to answer your questions. Moving on, though. What we see is, when we talk about Experience API, we're talking about that it's a power of observations. So let me see if I can kind of show you what this means. So a noun is how we talk about how someone did something. And I'll bet you that I just lost your video feed. I apologize for that. One moment. Thanks. So you think about these things as like, a noun, verb, and object. Somebody did something, but it could be to someone. It could be using stuff, and it could be with some result. These are observations. As much as we talk about these things in terms of activity streams, the way that we talk about them is past tense, and they really are in the way that you might observe what's happening. So how does it work? People interact with stuff. These are content, these are apps, these are business systems, etc. These interactions are observed and described as statements, activity statements. And that stuff sends those statements to a learning record store, an LRS. Now, what is an LRS? Well, it's a database, and it stores these activity statements, basically what we're calling the data. And the learning record stores can be software, even hardware. It can be hard-coded into microprocessors that stands on its own. It doesn't, it can be a standalone device. It can be a standalone enterprise software application. But LRSs can also be a function. It's really described as a function. So it can be part of other applications. It can be part of a data appliance. It can be part of an enterprise application. It can certainly be part of a learning management system. And we have seen several learning management systems that employ an LRS. So what I like to do is try to highlight that a learning management system covers a whole bunch of capabilities: user management, scheduling, course management, content storage, sequencing and navigation of learning content, the delivery of learning content, assessments, preferences. What an LRS does is just focus on the learning records. Now, as an individual software applications that call themselves an LRS, they may do lots of other things too, but really from a spec perspective, from an XAPI, like what is a learning record store perspective, it only really focuses on the learning records. So that's, in a nutshell, like what XAPI is. What I'd like to do now is talk a little bit about like who you're going to see at XAPI Camp Toronto. So just going in alphabetical order, let's talk about Rob Christie. He's with the Metrics Group, and he's going to be sharing lessons learned on like how do instructional designers, how do managers talk to developers about XAPI. Now, Rob's been developing content management systems and delivery platforms for e-learning and m-learning for over the last like decade and a half. He's an expert in web design, web application programming, e-learning development, and e-learning systems design. And he's done ground up builds of enterprise learning management systems, process design, implementation, deployment, and he's even done a lot of work with intelligent content schema design in terms of alternative formats for e-learning. Now, Mary Myers is a lead advisor of leadership in learning at the Kingston General Hospital. She's also studying with OCAD right now, finishing up her program there. Her background is all around like quality of service and health care. So she's going to talk a lot about the implications for XAPI and its role in delivering quality health care. Now, Mary is a certified training and development professional. She's at her last year of Strategic Foresight and Innovation program at OCAD. Her focus is on human-centered design, systems thinking, and foresight work, and how they fuel innovation in organizations. So much of her work has been strategic in nature, and has consisted of developing overall strategies for clients, informed by customer experience, service design, instructional design. She she's also, her aim is really just to be blissfully productive and bring optimism to everything she does while focusing on connecting these dots, specifically around like healthcare and learning. So Sean Putman has joined us a couple of times already. He does a lot of work in terms of working with, being basically just the go-to knowledge expert on what authoring tools and activity providers are doing with XAPI. He's the vice president of learning and development at Altair Engineering, and he's going to be talking with us again, as he did at our XAPI camp last month, on the best practices for working with a number of different activity providers that you can go out and buy off the shelf. Now, he's an instructor, he's an instructional designer, he's a developer. He's been doing that for over 15 years, and he spent his career designing and developing training programs. But he spent the last few years focusing on the use of and deployment of XAPI and focusing on its effect on learning interventions. And so he's spoken at a lot of industry conferences on XAPI, basically around this topic. Now, Mark Sheppard, he's a veteran L&D practitioner, leader, blogger, speaker. I've been fortunate enough to finally get to meet Mark, and while he's been working with Workplace Insiders, he's actually finishing up his work on a CHRL designation from Seneca College. So he's taking his experience from the Royal Canadian Air Force and working with ISPI, doing a lot from a learning practitioner point of view, and now applying it to the broader HR role. And so he's looking at the role of XAPI and its potential implications on human resources. Very excited to have him there, and I think that his talk is going to be pretty eye-opening. Now, Megan Torrance is the Chief Energy Officer of Torrance Learning, which makes sense. Megan has a very interesting and very friendly approach to like how did one get started with XAPI, not in terms of giant projects, but in terms of like day hikes. So, Megan has done some pretty novel projects with XAPI, not the least of which is a hands-on museum project with at Ann Arbor University, not Ann Arbor University, at the Hands-On Museum in Ann Arbor. And Megan has done this in terms of like leveraging RFID tags to identify kids who are in this museum, and being able to like empower all the different manipulatives and activities inside the museum with XAPI, so that teachers can actually see here's all of what students have been doing in the museum and how does it align to standards. We're excited to have her. Myra Travon joined us at our second XAPI camp this year. She's an educational futurist, and she has some amazing, interesting thoughts, perspectives on like how to approach learning experience design. And what she's going to be introducing at our XAPI camp is her framework for adaptive learning experiences. Now, Myra is an innovative learning experience designer, and she's an educational futurist, and she's got significant experience in user research, use cases, user journeys, surveys. She's got academic papers, a lot of work on data collection, analysis, and user testing within project implementations of information security, organizational development, mentorship. So we're really excited to have her. She's worked with a number of companies like Microsoft and the Gates Foundation and Walgreens and in the Ministry of Forests in Canada. She's going to be the light. And then we also have Chris Van Wingerden. Chris is the vice president of learning solutions at Domino Learning Systems, and they're the creators of Flow and of Claro. And what he's going to be talking about is some of the differences that are these new capabilities of XAPI that XAPI introduces to talking about content, and its differentiation from e-learning in terms of like the different types of content that can now be enabled with XAPI. Now, Chris he's a lifelong learning geek, and he's had careers in journalism and in books and publishing and book selling for the past 15 years, and he's been really deep into e-learning for the last decade, and on top of his background in adult education and literature, he is the vice president of learning solutions at Domino. Now, along with him, Duncan Welder, who's no stranger to the XAPI community. He's the director of client services at Risk Incorporated, and he's going to be talking about case studies of CMI5 in action. CMI5 is a profile of the Experience API that really focuses on the same types of use cases that SCORM was addressing it from a standards and spec perspective. So this is going to be incredibly exciting because this is basically CMI5 is, I would say the most accessible way for people who are used to doing e-learning to get into using XAPI. So Duncan holds a master's in education from Texas A&M, and he's been doing a lot of work with like high stakes compliance over the last decade. We're excited to have him as always. So that's in a nutshell our speakers and who's coming in, who we know is going to be in the room. What I'd like to do now is give a little bit of time to talk about how you can get ready for XAPI Camp in Toronto. So first, think about your roles and your goals. Who are you responsible for helping within your organization? What do they need help with? What and/or how do you help them? What do you want to be better? What do you want to learn about what is currently happening? And what do you want to do differently? And then start breaking these things down into what kind of data you'd like to collect. All right, pretend that you're interviewing a subject matter expert for something you want to support. What do they do first? What do they do second, etc.? Think through those processes. What do they do when they get stuck? How do they get unstuck? How does this activity play out when done well? So like basically, what does good look like? And how does it play out when it's mediocre or subpar? And then start gathering the resources that you already have available to you. What tools do you have access to? What resources in terms of people are available to you, and what skills do they have? Designers, developers, IT, etc. What systems do you have control of, and which require approval to make any kind of changes? And then prioritize. Of the projects you could do within your role, what will most positively impact business objectives the most? And other projects that you could do, what will positively impact organizational culture and internal needs? Because these things are going to all come together to weigh in on like what do you want to do and how do you want to do it. So I've talked a lot already. It's been about 20 minutes or so. I don't have a whole lot more to share with you, so I'd like to give the opportunity to, if there are any questions, pass them on. And if there's no questions, that's okay too. Well, then let's wrap up. Let me talk about our schedule. So next week on Tuesday, we start at 8 a.m. We're going to start after our welcome and getting to know everybody. We're going to have we'll kind of lay a groundwork for the vocabulary that you're likely to hear. There's a lot of buzzwords and lingo that go along with the XAPI community, and talk about XAPI. Well, I want to make sure that if you're in the room, that you are at least comfortable with the acronyms or the lingo that's likely to be thrown around all day. After that, we're going to have Sean Putman talk about what it's like to, these best practices for working with activity providers. And then late from 10 to around 10:45, we'll have the beginning of the first set of our campfire sessions. All of our speakers are talking for between basically 7 to 12 minutes, with a couple minutes for transition and maybe a question and an answer. The idea there is to give you just enough of a taste of what of some expertise that you're, one, engaged, and two, not bored out of your mind by just feeling like you're trapped listening to something that doesn't interest you. What we want to do is set the tone for the conversation that you want to have during these breakout times, which is really where the learning is going to happen. During our breakout sessions, this is where you're going to have access to are, the expertise that's in the room to answer the questions that you really want to answer, to talk or to walk through the lessons you want to learn around XAPI. These things are going to be suggested by you. We basically collect post-it notes all during the morning, and we organize them, and so that we can kind of group the ideas together in terms of like which breakout groups want to focus on what kinds of topics, and then the experts will kind of disperse themselves into those areas where it makes the most sense. That's going to be during our breakout session. We're going to have that during our breakout session over from 11 to 12, and then we're going to have lunch. Now afterwards, I'll present a little bit on like how to make sense of both the industry and the praxis, the formal practice as opposed to the theory around, working with XAPI. And then we're going to have two different sets of campfires where we'll have with two smaller breakout sessions associated with them. And then at the end we'll close out with questions, answers, next steps, so that we want to make sure that your day is well spent and that it's actionable. And when you leave XAPI camp next week, you're going back to your organization or going into the rest of the conference with a plan, with results, with more focused questions, whatever it is that you want to get out of it. We want to enable it. So with that, I will see you soon. I don't think that we have a whole lot else to share with you at this time. So feel free, as always, if you have any questions, if there's anything that you need to clear up before we get going on Tuesday, reach out. I'm Aaron at makingbetter.us. You have my Twitter information at Aaron E. Silvers on Twitter. I'm more than happy to answer whatever questions you can. And if there's something that I can do to help you out and help make connections for you, I'm more than happy to do so. That's all I have. So thank you. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Goodbye.